Hey everyone, this is Joe, and I'm a lead forecaster here in the National Weather Service office in Billings. We're on the west end of Billings, behind Costco, and I just want to thank Mr. McMullen for reaching out to us to provide some meteorology in real time, and I'm more than happy to create these videos. This is my first one. It'll be myself and my coworker Julie Arthur, so we'll get started. So I thought for the first one it would be interesting to look back at this winter. So I've come up with this table of a recap of what we call meteorological winter, which is uh, the midwinter months, basically December, January, February. So all of these stats look at those 3 month period, that 3 month period. Obviously, it was a very cold winter. Billings 5.3 degrees below normal. Miles City 7.5 degrees below normal. Um, with February really being the coldest month. Precipitation was above normal, obviously. We had over 4 inches of precipitation, which is water equivalent. So if you melted all the snow, what would you have? It was about 4 inches. Departure from normal over 2.5 inches above normal. That's a pretty high departure. It's good enough for the fourth wettest winter on our record. Our records go back to here in Billings 1934. And all of these observations are taken at the Billings Airport. Snowfall for the 3 month period was 64.7. That was the third highest on record and over 3 feet above normal. So that's a pretty big departure from normal. Just to give you an idea, the normal snowfall for the entire winter is 55 inches. So we received more snow just in those 3 months than what is our normal for entire winter. So in our tidbits that I've written here down below, here in Billings we had 21 days with the snow depth of at least 10 inches, and that's actually the most since the 77-78 winter. That was an epic winter. I wasn't here, but if you talk to some people from around here that were around in the 70s, there were some rough winters back then. Average temperature of only 5.7 degrees in Miles City in February was the coldest on record in Miles City. Sheridan had its coldest February since 1936, and February 1936 was a brutally cold month. Billings had its all-time record cold, which was minus 38. That was in the middle of February in 1936. Snow depths across the area really stacked up. By the end of the month, we had over anywhere from about a foot here in Billings to over 30 inches. The greatest snow depths remain east of us, east of Billings, over towards places like Forsyth, Miles City, Ashland, Broadus. There's some pretty good snow cover out there, especially. And it was a very cold New Year's Day, if you recall. I think Billings was near 20 below, but there were places that were much colder. It was 41 below in Mizpah on New Year's Day. So I wanted to touch on a little bit why it was so cold and snowy. It was a persistent weather pattern. And what I've shown here are a couple maps that show the conditions at 500 millibars. That's a pressure level at about the mid-levels of our atmosphere. It's about 18,000 feet. And we like to look at 500 millibars. It's called roughly the level of non-divergence. So it's a good place to track systems, vorticity, where we have rising motion and descending air. In order to create precipitation, you have to lift the air. That's a necessity. So by looking at 500 millibars, we can get an idea of what the atmosphere is doing. So on the left here is what was observed in February. And I chose February because that was a really cold and snowy part of winter. So observed on the left and what is normal is on the right. And on the observed side, we had a warm, strong, high-pressure ridge off in the Pacific, extending up into Alaska, and a lot of warm air up there. And that allowed for further east from Canada, some below normal heights at 500 millibars, and colder air feeding out of Canada. And so we had that persistent pattern that allowed for the cold air to remain. Normally, we would see bursts of cold and then this high pressure ridge over the Rocky Mountains would result in some downslope winds. And typically in the winter, our snow will melt. We see Chinook winds kick in. The snow comes and goes, but this winter, the pattern was provided less of those warm downslope winds. So, and other factors I've listed on the bottom here, La Nina, you may have heard about that. It's a condition out in the Pacific that favors the northern Rockies for colder and wetter conditions. I won't get into that now. The MJO is the second one. That's a Madden-Julian oscillation, and that refers to an area of convection or thunderstorm activity in the tropics. And when that area moves into the Pacific, the western part of the Pacific Ocean, what happens is you can get a lot of moisture and warm air that gets pumped up into the North Pacific. And so these systems that came out of the North Pacific for us did have a lot of moisture with them. And it was that combination of moisture off the Pacific overrunning the cold air coming out of Canada. That's what produced our snowfall. So the location of the MJO was another part that favored the moisture for us. Other factors, low polar sea ice. We have warm conditions in the Arctic, below normal sea ice, and above normal ocean temperatures. And all that means is you've got more moisture in the atmosphere. And so all of these systems out of the north, they have more moisture than they would otherwise. And so more moisture obviously results in better potential snowfall. And so this is actually a trend we've seen in recent years, the last couple decades. We've actually seen our midwinters become snowier, and I think this is the reason. And our snowfall in the edge seasons, the early season and late season, September, October, April, May, those are becoming warmer and less snowy. So this is kind of the pattern that we had set up for the winter. And the fourth factor I had listed here was luck. And that's that's kind of funny to say luck, but weather patterns do lock into place in certain positions, and if the certain weather pattern that locks in favors certain areas for, in this case, cold and snow, then that's what we get for the period of 2-3 weeks before the weather pattern changes. So luck is, definitely part of it, and that's the unpredictable side of what we do. Lastly here, I wanted to just look ahead. These are some climate outlooks. These are developed by the Climate Prediction Center. And they have a variety of outlooks. If you ever look at their webpage, cpc.noaa.gov, you can find all of these. And the 8 to 14 day outlook here on the first one on the top left, that's basically a week 2 outlook. And I grabbed these just this morning, so these are the most recent here as of today. So colder, below normal temperatures favored across the western part of the country as we move to the 3rd, 4th week of March. The next one is a 3 to 4 week outlook, which is basically end of March into April, and that's also favoring below normal temperatures. Looking ahead to the 1 month outlook, now this was created at the end of February, a couple months ago. The outlook for a couple weeks ago. The outlook for March at that time was for elevated chance of below normal temperatures over our area, and that's worked out so far. And the last one here is a 3 month outlook, and I decided I'd show the summer outlook. And if you look in the bottom left, it says valid JJA, and that means June, July, and August. And the outlook is for a hedge towards warmer than normal. And really that's just based on what we've seen recently is a trend towards warmer summers. There's not a real strong climate signal to suggest anything different than what we've seen, kind of recent trends. So that's the reason for that. That's all I have here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. I would suggest forwarding those to Mr. McMullen, and he can pass them on to me. And until next time, have a good day.